G'day everyone, welcome to Inside Rugby with Mark. Well, the final whistle's just been blown in Wellington in the test match between the All Blacks and France, and what a turnaround it was from last weekend's game. So this is my quick wrap after the final whistle. I'll give you my view on how I saw things in this game. First of all, the All Blacks hit the ground running tonight. It was a fantastic display, I thought, in the first half of this game. They played very, very well. France dominated a little bit in the first 2 or 3 minutes. The All Blacks didn't start extremely well with territory or possession, but once they started to get on a roll, it seems as though they were really in sync tonight. And I think what really made the difference to start off with tonight was the forwards started to really dominate up front and started to get a lot of front football for the All Blacks. We saw some fantastic performances early on, particularly from Ardie Savea playing captain tonight. And one of the things that was in the back of my mind throughout this whole game, watching the game today, was, did the All Blacks miss Scott Barrett? And in that first half, I didn't think they did at all. Patrick Tuipulotu had a fantastic first half, as did Fabian Holland. And they were getting a lot of line-out ball, very clean, good ball as the half started to unwind. And as a result of that, Roygaard and Beauden Barrett took control from the 9 and 10 position. And we saw some fantastic play. They were syncing up better. The passes were sticking this week, which really made a difference to the way the All Blacks went about their business. But the thing I thought they did really well in that first half was their kicking strategy. They put the ball down into the French territory and they put pressure on France by going after them with those kicks and then keeping the high-paced game going. And that really caused France a lot of problems. Of course, it was a hugely changed French team tonight, so we've got to take that into consideration. Fabian Galthies is committed to showing as many young players that he's got in this development squad a chance to play against the All Blacks, and that's what we saw on the park tonight. But don't let us think it was an easy game, because the All Blacks still had to execute, and I think that's what we were really missing from the game in Dunedin last week. We saw tries in the first half from Roygaard, who did a brilliant dart down the left-hand side and fooled everybody, because the forwards did a dummy run around the other side. It sucked in the French defence and Roygaard went down and scored the try. Savea went over for a great try as well in the first half, and he becomes the highest scoring try scorer for any All Black forward, taking over that milestone from Richie McCall. Then we saw a great try from Cody Taylor, another well-worked piece off a line-out maul that went really well for the All Blacks. And then Tupou Vaa'i finished off a great move from the All Blacks again, close to half-time, that really put them out into the lead by 29 points to 3. It was a fantastic lead by half-time, and the big thing for me was, okay, the execution went well in that first half. Look, the forwards did the work for me in that first half. They really were hungry. They played at a high-intensity pace, and they were clean after that first 4 or 5 minutes of just settling into the game. Christian Leo Willie did really well. Tupou Vaa'i was playing well at 6, and Ardie Savea was having a fantastic game as the captain and the leader. And it just seems to be a different kind of energy when Ardie is the captain. And it makes a really big difference, I believe. That's what I'm noticing between his leadership on the field. He steps up another gear compared to when we see Scott Barrett on the field. But let me know what you think about that. Is that just something I'm seeing, or are other people seeing that? So a great performance. I thought Beauden Barrett was doing a lot of really good stuff from number 10 tonight. He was doing all sorts of different kicking strategies that were keeping the French confused. The defence was offline, and then he was able to put some of his outside backs away for good runs as well. Billy Proctor had a great first half, a couple of big defensive plays as well from Proctor, and I think he really made up for last week's effort, and he'll be very, very pleased with that, as will Scott Robertson, I'm sure, with Billy Proctor's performance in that first half. Jordie Barrett also had a really big game, I thought. A couple of good defensive plays as well, holding up one of the potential try scores from France. So an outstanding performance from him. And Will Jordan was building more and more into the game as it got on. And of course, once the defences get tired, that's when Will Jordan comes into his own. So I thought it was a great first half display from the All Blacks. The French were a little bit missing in action at different times, but they were run ragged by an All Black team that were hitting their straps tonight with power, pace and accuracy, and that's what we were missing in Dunedin. Now at half-time, I said to myself, okay, can the All Blacks come out and really make a difference and carry on in the second half? In particular, watching the bench and were they going to have a big impact? Well, it was disappointing. It was a scrappy start to the second half. Again, we had a problem with the restart. This time, Fabian Galthies dropped the ball and it went out in touch. The French got some momentum for that, and for the next few minutes, France started to get back into the game. At the end of the game, we saw France scoring 14 points in the second half, the All Blacks the same. So really on the scoreboard, there wasn't much between us. And I was disappointed with the All Blacks in the second half at times. They looked scrappy. They looked a little bit disconnected. And for me, if I was to be really picky on this game from the All Blacks, despite them scoring a big score against this French team, is I don't think their bench is having the kind of impact we're going to need against the top nations with their top teams playing against us. It didn't work in Dunedin, and it didn't work again tonight for me. So despite the tries in the second half to Ioane and to Will Jordan getting over again, this time for the 41st try of his career, I still think the All Blacks have got some work to do on closing out games. They had a comfortable lead, of course. They probably took their foot off the pedal a little bit, but we need to see this bench really making a difference when they came on. Once we lost Roygaard and Barrett, it started to seem to get a little bit scrappy. The French bench made an impact in this game. And the difference for me for France was when we saw Cameron Woki come on and Taiffanua, two big players for France in the forwards, and they started to settle things down and give a little bit more of a platform for France to have a really good go in this game. Le Grac was their best player at number 9. I thought he played exceptionally well, both with ball in hand and also his kicking strategy. But unfortunately, outside of him, Segon and also Hastoy later on in the game didn't really have the breaks that the French were looking for. When they did break an open play, they looked dangerous. Barry's try was very, very good. And it's something we've become used to seeing from French teams, isn't it? Their spontaneity on attack. But it just didn't look like they were going to consistently get over the All Blacks line tonight. The defence from the All Blacks was very good. As I mentioned before, Proctor and Geordie Barrett were standouts for me. But some of the defensive work and turnover work from the All Blacks, particularly Tupou Vaiardi, Savia and Christian Leo Woolley, was first class tonight. So let's not be distracted from that. So the All Blacks, for me, really set that game up with a great first half performance of 29 points to 3. They were patchy in the second half, and the bench didn't make the impact that I've been looking for from this All Black team. And I think that's something they really need to have a look at, because once we get into the Rugby Championship, they're going to be having to play 80 minutes. And that's something that I think's lacking a little bit. We've got to be able to carry on once we've got a big lead like this over the other top teams we're going to be playing this year. But a much improved performance from the All Blacks. It was stunning to watch in the first half. I wrote down a couple of things around the words impressive, high pace, good connections, good rhythm in the game, and things started to look a bit better. So if we can see the same kind of continuity next week in Hamilton, and we see some real impact from the bench for the All Blacks, then I think we can look forward to a very promising season coming up from the All Blacks. Standout players for the All Blacks for me tonight, I've got to give it to Ardie Savea, though, as being best on the ground. I thought Roygaard and Beauden Barrett had great games. Fabian Galthies and Tuipulotu did really well in the locking position. The back three did the job that I was looking for. Mentioned that in my preview video. Tupou Vai was good at 6. Christian Leo Woolley had a much better game at number 8. And Ardie played a fantastic game. The front row was good without being exceptional, and the scrums were fairly tied throughout the game. So as far as France were concerned, they were outplayed tremendously in the first half, but they bounced back in the second half. Credit to them. They had a lot of new players coming on in the second half that did make an impact, and I talked about Taiffanua and Woki in particular. And I just thought they had a couple of opportunities that they probably didn't capitalise on in the second half when the All Blacks fell off the rhythm and the sync that they had going in the first half as those changes were made in the All Black team. We need to look at the front row coming off the bench. They didn't have a huge impact on this game, and when they're going to be up against teams like South Africa, Argentina and Australia, they're going to have something they're going to have to really battle with. So it's going to be interesting to see what Scott Robertson does around Takiaho, Ollie Norris and Tossie coming off the bench. So the final score was 43 points to 17. Both teams go to FMG Stadium in Hamilton next weekend to play the third game of this series. Looking forward to that. So let me know what you thought about the game. I'll be back in the next couple of days with an in-depth analysis of this game. I just wanted to give you my views and opinions after the full-time whistle. And I'd like to read all your comments on what you thought of the game tonight from Wellington. We'll go to Hamilton next week. We'll see what the French do with their selections. And we'll also see what the All Blacks come up with for that third game. So there we go. That's it for this video. Thanks very much for watching. Plenty more rugby coming up this weekend. And I'll be sending lots of content through to you all here on Inside Rugby with Mark. So keep enjoying your rugby. It's time to say good morning from Cancun in Mexico. Bye for now.